Hello everyone, welcome to A Fistful of Dice. My name is Matt. This is going to be kind of a different video. We're not going to be talking about Dungeons & Dragons or role-playing games. We're going to be talking about Star Wars, which is one of my great loves, something that I have loved for essentially my entire life. It's something that was introduced to me by my dad at a very young age, and I grew up in the era of the special editions of the original trilogy, and then I was a teenager when the prequels came out. Preteen when Phantom Menace came out, and then I was a teenager for Attack of the Clones. And I was in high school when Revenge of the Sith came out, and now I am an adult as we embark on this new journey with the new Star Wars canon, which I've been generally enjoying a lot. But one thing that I love to talk about, and anyone who knows me and has hung out with me in person can attest to this, I love talking about the Star Wars prequels and how I think they should have gone. So I want to say first off that I do not hate the prequels. I enjoy the prequels for what they are. They're definitely not my favorite movies. I don't generally include them in my marathons of the Star Wars movies. But there's a lot to like about the prequels. I have a lot of issues with the prequels. And so this is not me trying to say this is how we should rewrite the prequels. It's just fun for me to think about it because any Star Wars fan that was a Star Wars fan before the prequels came out had an idea of what the prequels might be. Because, episode 4, okay, well, what's episodes 1, 2, and 3? And we think about, what are the Clone Wars? What did Obi-Wan do before all of this? What was Yoda like? What did the Old Republic look like? Things like this. And so I feel like every Star Wars fan that was around before the prequels sort of has in their mind their idea of what the prequels may have looked like. And so this is sort of like my idea. And these are ideas that I had when I was a kid, growing up as an adult, reading all the expanded universe novels, learning more about, the Old Republic and the Mandalorians and all that kind of cool stuff and what the Clone Wars were. So this is kind of me. I've written a lot of it down. But this is me just kind of talking about if Matt Click was in charge of making the Star Wars prequels, what would they look like? You'll have to excuse me. I'm also getting over being sick. So this is not fixing the prequels. It's not making them better necessarily. It's just, hey, here's some cool ideas that I want to throw out there. It's something that I've had written down for a long time. And actually, my buddy Barker over at Be a Better Game Master has told me several times that he would love to see me do a video about this because I've shared these notes with him and he's read them over. So without further ado, enough of my yakking, let's boogie, etc. I'm going to talk about my version of Star Wars Episode 1. So first off, the title, The Phantom Menace. Never been a fan of the title, The Phantom Menace. This first episode is going to be entitled The Living Force. And that's going to refer to a character that we'll get to later, but it's sort of this idea of the Force is not as prevalent in the Old Republic as we see in the prequels that exist. So there's not, Jedi all over the place. The Jedi are very rare. It makes sense to me that in order for something to go extinct, it needs to be kind of rare to begin with, right? And so all of the Jedi that we see in the prequel movies doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. There's tens of thousands of them, and you would need to, require so much time and effort and work in order to track them down and kill them all to the point where there's literally only a handful of them left. So let's just go over the basic tenets. This is all kind of stuff that would be sort of explained in the opening crawl, right? Okay, so the opening crawl comes out and we learn about the Clone Wars. And if you see my eyes flicked over, it's because I'm looking at my notes. I have my notes here in front of me on the screen. The Clone Wars had been raging for the better part of 2 decades at the beginning of the Living Force. The galaxy is on its knees at this point. The Clone Wars have completely decimated the galaxy, taxed so many different factions and cultures of their resources. Planets have been destroyed. This war is... the galaxy cannot withstand much more of this war that has gripped it. The war is being fought between the Mandalorian Empire and the Old Republic. The Mandalorians banded together under Mandalore, who basically took all of these, clans that would war against each other just as often as they would war against others. He united or subjugated all of these Mandalorian clans and basically created a grand Mandalorian empire. And he has, he or she has decided to strike out against the galaxy, and that is what began the Clone Wars. in these prequels, we will see a lot more of the Mandalorian culture and what they're like. And how they came to be what they are in the original trilogy, you know, this sort of mercenary sort of thing. I know there's a lot of Mandalorian stuff in the Clone Wars animated show, and I actually enjoy all of that Mandalorian stuff. You can kind of tell that, like, the creators of that Clone Wars TV show, like, kind of wanted the Mandalorians to be a bigger part of the original prequels, and so they kind of, like, put them in the Clone Wars TV show, which I enjoy. So I'm kind of going off of that a little bit with actually including them in the movies here. So the Mandalorians, in particular, they hate the Jedi. For centuries of war, you know, the Mandalorians have teamed up several times in the past with an organization like the Sith, and so they've kind of been beaten down a lot by the Jedi. So, in secret, the Mandalorians team up with the Sith, who are kind of secretly orchestrating the whole thing, very similar to the existing prequels where Darth Sidious is sort of orchestrating this war to bring the galaxy to, you know, the brink of destruction so that he can then manipulate the Senate and take control and all of that. So all of that is very, very similar. But, you know, it's no longer the Separatists and the Republic. It's the Republic and the Mandalorians. Now, the Republic has an army. It was always weird to me that the Republic wouldn't have a standing army. The fact that they were like, oh no, war is breaking out, we better real quick have some clones, you know, like that was just always kind of weird to me. So the Republic certainly has an army. It has a fleet. It has, you know, an army that protects the Republic, that they can send to Republic planets that are in need. Like that's the thing, man, is like, if you were a Republic planet, if you were a Senate planet, right, in the Republic, what if your planet was in trouble? What if there was a natural disaster? What if Mandalorians came and attacked? You're telling me the Republic doesn't have a National Guard? Come on. They would have an army. So the Republic has an army, so there's no clone army. So the Clone Wars are called the Clone Wars because of this. The Jedi are dying out. They are incredibly rare. There are fewer than 1,000 active Jedi at the opening of this war. To find a true-born Force user, someone capable of manipulating the Force and training to become a Jedi, is almost non-existent at this point. And so the Jedi are already dying out at the start of these movies. They are a dying breed. You know, we don't get to see the Jedi in their prime, really. But they are still a force for good, and they are the knights of the Old Republic. In a very divisive move, the Republic sort of brings up, hey, we have cloning technology. We haven't used it because it's technically illegal to clone people, but what if we were to clone existing Jedi so that we would have enough Jedi to protect the Republic? So they clone Jedi. So now there's closer to like 10,000 active Jedi, you know, 9,000 of those Jedi being clones of the original 1,000 Jedi. So in this case, you have a character like Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is literally OB-1 Kenobi. He's a clone. And I always thought that was the case when I was a kid, because he mentions the Clone Wars, and his name is Obi-Wan. I was like, Obi-Wan. And I know it's spelled O-B-I-W-A-N, but I always thought it'd be cool. What if Ben Kenobi was a clone? You know, that's why an original name was Obi-Wan. I just like that idea. So, there are clone Jedi. So instead of having, you know, cloned troopers fighting robots, you have Mandalorians fighting clone Jedi, which is kind of how I always envisioned the prequels going. So that is all established kind of in the opening crawl, you know, in much fewer words and much more succinct and better written than I just explained. But basically, those are the tenets that we're going to be working with as we move forward here. All right. So the film opens with a space battle, very similar to what we see in A New Hope. There's a Republic cruiser that is being shot down by Mandalorian warships. So we get this brief, very, very brief space battle where the Mandalorian warships are sort of ganging up on this Republic cruiser, and the cruiser is just getting taken out. Now, we cut to a shot inside the Mandalorian warship. Who's in command? Boba Fett. That's right, Boba Fett is a general in the Mandalorian army during the Clone Wars. So what this means is that he's not a kid during the prequels, right? He is about the same age as Darth Vader. And so when we see him in the original trilogy, he's in his, 50s, 60s maybe. So he is a young man, but he's a general in the Mandalorian army. So we get to see Boba Fett in action in the prequels, and he will be kind of a reoccurring antagonist, a minor antagonist as we move forward here. Now, he's teaming up with Darth Maul. I really like the character of Darth Maul. I think he's really cool, really neat, and I love what they did with him in the Clone Wars TV show. So Darth Maul is in my version of the prequels, as well as Boba Fett. Him and Boba Fett are kind of working together, but there's sort of a tenuous relationship here. So we see Boba Fett and Darth Maul, and we get this just totally badass scene where the Mandos like board the Republic cruiser. They disable it. It's like kind of floating out in space, listless. And Darth Maul and Boba Fett and a few like Mandalorian warriors get on this boarding ship, and they go and they board the Republic cruiser. And they board the cruiser. Maul gets out. He's just being a badass. He doesn't ignite his lightsaber. He only uses the Force. So we don't see a lightsaber come out yet. I want the lightsabers to be more special. You know, I don't want them to ignite at the first sign of trouble. So Maul is going in. He's just throwing people around, force choking people, throwing them against the bulkhead. And the Mandalorians are just being utterly ruthless. You know, show the Mandalorians for the ruthless warriors that they are. Show how efficient they are at killing. And show Boba Fett being a badass too. You know, Boba Fett's taking a bunch of people out. Obi-Wan Kenobi is aboard this Republic cruiser. He's a lone Jedi Knight aboard this Republic cruiser. And he is carrying the MacGuffin of this movie, right? There's always got to be a MacGuffin in a Star Wars movie. I'm not super attached to this idea, but I like the idea that the MacGuffin in this movie is like the troop movements of the Mandalorians. It's like Mandalore's battle plan. So it's not plans for a death machine. It's not, you know, plans for a super weapon. It's literally like the war plan of Mandalore, where the ships are going to move, their invasion of Coruscant, all that kind of stuff, you know, planned out for like a year. And so this is really vital information that could help the Republic win the war, because at this point in the movie, they are losing. Even though they've cloned the Jedi Knights, it's a little bit like too little, too late. There's too many Mandalorians. Mandalore is too, you know, charismatic a leader. And the Mandalorians are just, you know, trouncing the Republic. So this is kind of like what could make or break the Republic's war effort here. So Obi-Wan Kenobi is carrying this battle plan. Now, we see Obi-Wan Kenobi getting people onto escape pods. He's being like a really good guy. Like, establish him as a very like heroic, good guy who is he's basically, you know, helping everyone get onto the escape pods before he can. And he knows, like, he hears Maul and Boba Fett and the Mandos getting closer and closer to this area of the ship. So he gets everybody on escape pods, launches them, and he's got this plan with him. And he knows that he has to get it to Coruscant to give to the military leaders, because it's intel that could, like I said, win the war. So as the escape pods sort of start shooting out of the ship, Maul gets on the comm and says, shoot down the escape pods. No one can escape alive. And Boba Fett's kind of like, hey man, like, we Mandalorians are kind of honorable warriors. Shooting unarmed escape pods is not really part of the Mandalorian code. And Darth Maul's like, I don't care. Shoot them down. So the Mandalorian battlecruisers start shooting the escape pods as they're shooting out of the Republic cruiser. Obi-Wan Kenobi's escape pod is hit by a turbo laser bolt, and it just goes like kind of spinning into space. The engines are flickering. You see the light in the window go off, and the pod just kind of drifts into space, and we don't know what happens to Obi-Wan at this point. Now we cut and we go to a spice freighter that comes upon the wreckage of the battle some days later. The ship's navigator is a young man named Anakin Skywalker, a farm boy from Tatooine. He's a rough and tumble type. He cares a lot for people. He's not a kid. He's a young adult. He's like 22, 23 years old, so we don't have to deal with this, you know, yippee kind of stuff. He's a grown man. This spice freighter kind of comes upon the wreckage of the Republic cruiser, and they start scavenging what they can. Anakin, being the navigator, he's on the radar, he's on the navigation console. He detects a life sign coming from one of the destroyed escape pods. So he kind of tells the captain, like, oh, hey, there's life signs in one of those escape pods. The captain's like, that's not possible. This wreckage has been out here for days, and there's no way that someone can survive out here. And Anakin's like, well, I'm telling you, there's somebody alive in that escape pod. Now, alternatively, you could have Anakin be using the Force without really knowing it, but he knows. He uses intuition, and he's like, someone's alive out there. And the captain's like, no way. And Anakin's like, no, I'm telling you, there's someone alive out there. I know it. I know it for sure that there's someone alive out in their wreckage. Now, the crew of the Spice Freighter, it's like a bunch of Outer Rim misfits. So this is our chance to have some kind of likable characters in the prequel. Like maybe there's like a wisecracking droid. Maybe there's a Wookiee. You could throw some like lesser known Star Wars races in there that we haven't really seen interact with people. You could put a Trandoshan or a Twi'lek in there. Like they're kind of fun characters, but they're also kind of dirty and dingy. They're working on a spice freighter, so they're not, super well off. But have the crew be a likable cast of characters, these minor characters. In any case, so the spice freighter, they find Obi-Wan's pod, whether through the navigation console that Anakin is using or Anakin using his intuition to know that there's somebody out there. They find Obi-Wan in an escape pod without life support, and he's like in a force trance. He's like in hibernation. He's basically used the force to shut down his body so that he can survive inside this escape pod as his oxygen is running low until someone can come find him. They pick him up and they jump out of the system. Obi-Wan, he wakes up on the spice freighter and he immediately demands to use the comm to contact Coruscant. The captain's like, okay, who in the hell are you? Like, I'm not going to let you use the comm. I don't know who you are. You could be a Mandalorian. And he goes, oh, my name is Ben. I'm a soldier of the Republic, and I'm carrying valuable information. You have to let me use your comm. Anakin vouches for him. We need to establish Anakin as a really likable character. He's got, he obviously is going to need a dark streak, but we don't want him to seem sort of whiny or petulant. He needs to seem like someone who cares about people. If we establish him as a likable character, someone who cares deeply for people and wants to help them, then it's going to be more meaningful when he falls to the dark side later on. So have Anakin stand up for Obi-Wan and vouch for him to be able to use the comm. So they let him use the comm. Obi-Wan goes in there and he contacts Palpatine, who is the Jedi Council liaison from the Senate. So he's not necessarily a senator, but he works very closely with the Jedi in order to represent their interests in the council. Obi-Wan tells Palpatine, hey, I'm alive. I'm carrying information that is vital to the war effort. I have Mandalore's battle plan. You need to let the Jedi Council know, and you need to let the Senate know. I'm going to try and get it to you. So Obi-Wan basically tells the crew of the spice freighter, like, hey, you'll get paid all the credits if you drop me off on Coruscant. Like, that's how vital this information is that I'm carrying. And the crew is kind of waffling about it a little bit, and maybe even some of the crew say, well, why don't we just hand him off to the Mandalorians? They'll probably pay just as handsomely, and it doesn't require us to, schlep all the way to the core systems to go to Coruscant. Anakin, though, wants to help, even without payment. He feels very drawn to Obi-Wan and really wants to help him. So the crew is reluctant, but Obi-Wan uses forced persuasion to convince the captain. So the captain's saying, well, why don't we just drop him off with the Mandalorians? They'll probably pay a little bit more. And Obi-Wan kind of subtly uses a little forced persuasion. He does a little hand wavy, and he says, no, that won't do. You'll have to take me to Coruscant. And the captain says, no, that won't do. We'll have to take him to Coruscant. And Anakin is kind of like, wait a minute. Is this guy a Jedi? Now, it's important to note that the Jedi are kind of like, they're not going to dress like in the robes and stuff. It was always weird to me in the prequels that the Jedi wore robes like you would wear on Tatooine, because it's like, okay, is Uncle Ben a Jedi? Because Uncle Ben is wearing a Jedi outfit. Aunt Beru's wearing a Jedi outfit. The only reason that Obi-Wan wears those robes is because he lives on Tatooine, and that's what people on Tatooine wear. So it didn't make sense to me that the Jedi would walk around wearing robes. So Obi-Wan is actually wearing just like a uniform. He's like wearing armor, the same armor that a Republic soldier would wear. So it's not obvious that like, oh, this dude's different. So Anakin starts to suspect a little bit like, oh, this guy might be force sensitive. I've heard about these Jedi. I wonder if he's one of them. So kind of have a similar thing where in the prequels, like Anakin is very drawn to Qui-Gon Jinn because, Anakin has read all these stories and legends about the Jedi. And, he's saying like, oh, I know, nobody can kill a Jedi, that sort of thing. So have that kind of same like wonder, like, oh, wow, is he a Jedi sort of thing. Now, meanwhile, in another scene, we see Maul talking to his master, Darth Sidious. Now, again, we're going to have Palpatine and Sidious where it's like, I know Palpatine is Sidious, but we're still going to kind of play up the thing with the cloak over the, the hood over the face and stuff. And Maul is talking to his master, and Darth Sidious says, someone survived the destruction of the Republic cruiser. Hinting that Darth Sidious is Palpatine, or at least somebody who knows Palpatine, because right now the only person who knows that Obi-Wan is alive is Obi-Wan and Palpatine. Maul comes out to the bridge of the Mandalorian ship, and he's like, hey, you guys effed up. Like, what? Somebody survived that Republic cruiser. I thought I told you to shoot down all these escape pods. Who was in charge of shooting down the escape pods? And this one Mandalorian's like, me. And Maul kills him. Maul, like, picks him up, like, force chokes him, throws him against the bulkhead. Just, like, show him, like, just being a badass, but also, like, ruthless. Like, give him a serious Darth Vader vibe, where he's just like, you're all expendable. Like, if you mess up, I'm going to kill you. Now, Boba doesn't like this. Boba is like, listen, you've been stepping on my feet this entire time. I'm in charge of this Republic cruiser. You're a Sith here to help. And so Boba tries to stop him from doing this, and they fight briefly. But Maul overpowers him, force chokes him down to the floor, and basically tells Boba Fett, like, get in line, and we need to find this spice freighter that Obi-Wan Kenobi is on. Well, he doesn't know he's Obi-Wan Kenobi, but we need to find this Jedi who's on this spice freighter. Do it now. Tell me when we get there. And he goes in his meditation chamber. Mandalorians are, like, picking up the body of their friend, this gunner that got killed by Maul, and they're like, General Fett, are you going to put up with that? And he's like, he goes like, our alliance with the Sith will soon no longer be necessary, or something like that, sort of hinting that, okay, well, maybe the Mandalorians don't really need the Sith, and maybe they're going to try and sort of push them out of this partnership. So, back on the spice freighter, Obi-Wan and Anakin are sort of immediately hitting it off. Anakin tells Obi-Wan about his childhood on Tatooine and how he grew up there. How his family comes from, like, a long line of moisture farmers, and he sort of left at the first chance he had to get into space, and he always dreamed of being a pilot and going from different planet to planet and seeing all these different locations. And he sort of talks about how, it's not really like I imagined it to be. It's very dirty and grimy, and I just kind of navigate this freighter, and there's not a lot of skill involved. He seems very out of place, but he's also very skilled. And Obi-Wan Kenobi sort of catches on here, going by Ben. He sort of catches on here, and he senses that there's something different about Anakin. Anakin feels special. And now bear in mind that true-born Jedi are rare here. There's, like, less than 1 in 1,000 Jedi that are true-born, like, non-clone, Force-using Jedi right now. The other thing that Anakin talks to Obi-Wan about is that he has always felt kind of different and out of place. He's always been able to... He's an empath. He's always been able to sense the pain of other people. And he carries that pain with him every day. He's like a sponge, and he just soaks up all of this emotion. He also mentions that he can kind of do things that he doesn't quite understand, and he's always had these weird abilities. And he sort of lets slip that he's hurt some people in the past using his abilities. And actually, the reason why he left Tatooine is because he hurt someone that he cared about using these abilities. And he prefers to kind of be out here in the dark of space, away from people, so he doesn't hurt anyone. The spacer life works for Anakin Skywalker because being around people is literally painful for him. He soaks up all that negative emotion, and in addition to that, he's afraid that he's going to hurt somebody with his abilities. So, we establish that Anakin is a good kid, really good guy, cares about people, but there's something there. There's a darkness to him that he is trying to actively suppress, to the point where he has sort of put himself into self-exile in order to avoid that darkness that is threatening to swallow him. Meanwhile, Maul is in his meditation chamber, and he's sort of reaching out with the Force. He's, probing the galaxy, feeling the different Force users. He zeroes in on the surviving Jedi. He zeroes in on Obi-Wan. But then he senses a strong Force presence with Obi-Wan, stronger than Maul has ever felt before. Now, this chase is not just about the Mandalorian battle plan. This is about finding the Force user before the Jedi do. This is about finding this person who is so powerful in the Force that it's literally blinding. So now that he's sort of found the spice freighter and he knows that there's this Force user on board, he tells the Mandalorians, here's where the freighter is, light speed. We need to get there now. Now, what happens is the whole Mandalorian fleet doesn't go, but Maul, Boba, and like a small but elite group of Mandalorians take a small, like, fast attack ship, like a stealth ship, to pursue the freighter while the rest of the fleet sort of, holds position, waits for their signal. Boba, Maul, and the Mandalorian commandos in their fast attack stealth ship catch up to the freighter and give chase. And there's sort of a scene in the ring of a planet that the freighter is, flying past, very similar to in episode 2 when Jango is chasing Obi-Wan through the asteroid field, right? And there's that cool kind of flying, dogfighting scene. Very, very similar to that, but in a spice freighter. So they attack the freighter, and the pilot is killed almost immediately, the pilot of the freighter. So Anakin, he's sitting right next to the pilot in the navigation chair. He sort of pushes the pilot out of the navigation chair and takes the helm. So this is the first time we're seeing Anakin fly a ship. He guides the ship through the ring of this planet, and holy crap, can he fly. He does the impossible with this ship. I mean, this is a big, rickety spice hauler, and he's doing corkscrews and crazy U-turns, K-turns. Like, this guy is guiding this ship through the ring of this planet. He is outrunning these Mandalorians, these trained battle pilots. Obi-Wan is sort of like strapped in a seat in the bridge, and he's watching Anakin. And we get this scene where Obi-Wan realizes just how Force-sensitive Anakin is. And he realizes, like, not only is this guy Force-sensitive, this guy is like the living Force. He is the Force incarnate. This is the most powerful natural-born Force user I have ever encountered. And Anakin is doing it like it's nothing. He's doing things, reacting to things that haven't happened yet. This guy is like the living Force. So the freighter survives the chase and manages to hide from the Mandalorians. What I'm thinking is that, the spice freighter doesn't have any weapons on it, but they sort of, like, Anakin takes it through this crazy, like, a bunch of holes in this big asteroid or something like that, and the Mando ship kind of, like, clips a wall and gets damaged and has to sort of, like, give up the chase. But meanwhile, the spice freighter, its hyperdrive is failing, so they have to find a planet in order to get repaired on. So Anakin, very quickly, using his navigation skills, because he's a navigator on a spice freighter, like Obi-Wan said in A New Hope, he plots a new course, and Obi-Wan is like, hey, that planet there, what's that planet? And Anakin's like, oh, it's a planet called Alderaan. Obi-Wan's like, I know Alderaan, that's a Republic planet. I know a senator there who can help us. Head there. So they head to Alderaan. So they managed to get the space freighter to Alderaan, like just barely getting it to Alderaan. They set the freighter down in the water, and they managed to make it into the city. But the Mandalorians are sort of keeping a low profile. They don't want to just show up at Alderaan looking for the Jedi, because Alderaan is a Republic planet. And they know that if the Mandalorians show up and word gets back to Coruscant, the Republic fleet is going to show up at Alderaan in a few minutes and just completely decimate this small sort of fleet that the Mandalorians have. So, the spice freighter crew, including Obi-Wan and Anakin, they're in the city. They're trying to get into the city, and it's at this point that the Mandalorians catch up with them. So the Mandalorians have their stealth ship, right? And I literally mean a stealth ship, like it's a bird of prey. It doesn't show up on radar. They can actually obscure it from vision. So it's, kind of bring in the stealth ships from the expanded universe, like the TIE Phantom and stuff, but have the Mandalorians have this stealth technology, which is one of the reasons why they're so effective against the Republic. So the Mandalorians catch up to the Spice Freighter crew. And at this point, we get our first lightsaber ignition. Obi-Wan busts out his lightsaber because Anakin is in trouble. And I mentioned earlier, I want the lightsabers to feel more special. In The Phantom Menace, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon literally ignite their lightsabers because there's gas coming into the room. And it's like, what? Why did you do that? That's so dumb. So, keep the lightsaber special. A Jedi does not draw their lightsaber unless they absolutely have to. So the Mandalorians are fighting. Obi-Wan busts out his lightsaber, revealing that, yes, he is a Jedi. He fights these Mandalorians, cuts 2 of them down, and Boba Fett escapes, relatively unscathed, and returns to tell Maul that, hey, we found them, but there's, that Jedi just kicked our ass. Obi-Wan then makes contact with the Republic Senator of Alderaan, a woman named Padme Amidala. Yes, that's right. There's no Naboo in this version of the prequels. Padme is a senator of Alderaan. And she's been sort of pushing for her planet to become more active in the war effort. They're sort of taking a neutral stance, but they have this really powerful fleet. And so she's been very vocal in the Senate about, hey, we need to step in here and help the Republic in their war effort. And Obi-Wan, was talking to Padme, and he's like, hey, here's the deal. The Mandalorians are after us. They literally just attacked us here on Alderaan. So they're here. We need to get this information to Coruscant, and Alderaan's in danger. The Mandalorians are here. Padme is like, she's a little bit more badass, a little more kick-ass in this. She's a senator who kind of gets stuff done. She really wants her planet to be more active, and has taken sort of a genuine interest in the fate of the galaxy. And what we're going to do here is we're going to hint at Padme and Obi-Wan having a romantic past. They kind of like each other. There's a strong hint that they may have been involved at some point in the recent past. But obviously it didn't work out because of the war and everything, and Obi-Wan's a clone, and we're not sure how all that works. So we're doing away with the stupid, Jedi can't be in love or get married. We're getting rid of that. And there's no rule against it, but it's simply just that it's not going to work. I'm a clone. I'm fighting in this war. You're a senator. It's just not going to work out, right? So we're not going to come out and say it, but we're going to hint that there's some sort of romantic interest here between Obi-Wan and Padme, which will set up some interesting conflict dynamics later on in the prequel trilogy when Anakin develops feelings for Padme, okay? So somewhere in here, that they manage to take a rest, and they're able to just talk. And there's a scene where Obi-Wan and Anakin are kind of talking, and Obi-Wan kind of has a little come to Jesus with Anakin, and he's like, here's the deal, you are incredibly potent with the Force. That is rare. I would really like you, after all of this is said and done, to come with me to Coruscant so that the Jedi can train you. And Anakin is kind of no. He's immediately I don't want to do it. We're going to have the refusal of the call, in the hero's journey, where Anakin is I don't want to do that. I don't want to become more powerful in the Force. I've already hurt people with the Force. I'm scared of what I'm capable of. I don't understand these abilities, and I don't want to develop them further. And Obi-Wan's we're not going to teach you how to be more destructive. We're going to teach you how to use these abilities for good. And Anakin's I don't know. He's still very hesitant. So we'll leave it at that. Anakin is he's warming up a little bit to the idea, but mostly he's kind of no, I want nothing to do with this. I do not want my abilities to be developed. I don't want to know about them. I just want to live my life of quiet peace. I just want to navigate on this spice freighter, and that's it. So Boba Fett gets back to Darth Maul. The Mandalorians are stealthed they're in orbit above Alderaan in their stealth ship. Maul hears about, okay, Obi-Wan busted out his lightsaber and he kicked our asses. Maul's like, dude, screw this. We're going down there, calling the rest of the fleet. Boba Fett is like, dude, this is a Republic world. We don't have the manpower to invade this planet. You're compromising the success of our invasion of Coruscant. And Maul, again, he's just like, dude, tough noogies. This isn't about your invasion anymore. There's an incredibly powerful Force user down there. It is imperative that I find this Force user before the Jedi do. Boba Fett's like, fine. But if we're going to invade this planet, we're doing it my way. At this point, Padme, she's meeting with the military leaders of Alderaan, including Bail Organa, and she convinces the military leaders that the planet is in very real danger, and so they sort of call their fleet in, put the fleet in orbit around the planet to defend the planet, and they call the Republic for aid. So they put out a message to the Republic, hey, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Mandalorian battle plan. The Mandalorians are here. They're coming with their fleet. We require aid. and she also, contacts the Senate, explains the situation, all that. Here's what happens, though. The Mandalorian fleet bypasses the Alderaan fleet by coming out of hyperspace in the atmosphere of Alderaan, which is, like, impossible to do. We saw Han Solo barely do this in a small ship in The Force Awakens. Imagine an entire fleet of Mandalorian warships warping in right above the city. And maybe some of them don't make it. Maybe some of them crash into the planet. But that's kind of the idea, right? So literally there's a fleet in orbit, like waiting for the Mandalorians to show up, and the Mandalorians appear in front of them in orbit, in the atmosphere, above this city in Alderaan, which is a nearly impossible feat for non-Mandalorians. So really play up how awesome the Mandalorians are. They, like, literally jumped into the atmosphere. So, the Alderaanians, like, they kind of scramble their fighters, and they start to fight back. And there's this really awesome battle scene above the city. So we see, there's Mandalorian warships and fighters above the city, and there's a fight going on above the city. So we're going to see this really awesome sort of in-atmosphere space battle, for lack of a better term. During this battle scene, Anakin and Obi-Wan, they're kind of like taking cover or whatever, and Obi-Wan is like, we have to get out of here. It's too important. This battle plan, it's too important to let it fall in the hands of the Mandalorians. And Anakin's like, no, I have to help. I can't leave. And Obi-Wan's like, dude, I get it. So Anakin gets in a fighter, and he flies up to fight. And he's not going to say yippee, right? So this is very similar to in Phantom Menace. Anakin hides in a Naboo fighter and ends up accidentally going up into space. No, he makes the decision to go up and fight. So we get some cool shots of Anakin being an awesome dogfighter, using the Force to fly around, kill a bunch of Mandalorian fighters, all that kind of stuff. At this point, Maul shows up, and Obi-Wan is like, whoa, what? Because Obi-Wan didn't know that the Sith were involved, and all of a sudden here's this Sith warrior standing here. Maul busts out his lightsaber, but it's a single-bladed lightsaber, just a regular red single-bladed lightsaber. Cool, right? But not double-sided yet. So they fight for a little bit, and after Maul sort of realizes that Obi-Wan is actually pretty good, he busts out the other side. They're kind of like locked in, and he goes, and it goes, and another blade pops out, and it's like big reveal, right? Audience goes crazy. Oh my god, he's got a double-sided lightsaber. If possible, don't show the double-sided lightsaber in the trailers for this movie. Have it revealed in the movie. Big fight, big lightsaber fight, really cool. Maybe it's in the streets of Alderaan while the battle is happening, so there's explosions going off. Occasionally, like, there's Alderaanian soldiers and Mandalorian soldiers, and, like, Maul will, like, take a brief break to, like, kill some, like, Alderaanian soldiers, and Obi-Wan's, like, trying to stop him. He's, like, bypassing. He's, like, just barely surviving this fight. It's this crazy fight. Explosions going off. A fighter goes and explodes while they're fighting. And none of this dumb martial arts crap. Like, the lightsaber fighting, it's like they're fighting with long swords. They should feel heavy, just like the lightsaber fighting in the original trilogy and the new trilogy as well. That's my preferred style of lightsaber fighting. No flips, no unnecessary spinning, just, two guys trying to kill each other with plasma weapons. And Maul's just like a dick. He's like, mocking Obi-Wan for being a clone. He's, you're not a real person. You don't have the gift like I do. You were manufactured to use the Force, and you will never be as powerful as a true Force user. Now, at this point, the Mandalorians kind of see that the battle is turning against them. And Boba Fett, he's on the bridge of this starship, and he says, order the retreat. The battle is lost. We can't risk the fleet for this planet. The Mandalorians are like, oh, sir, but Darth Maul's still down there. Boba says, let him deal with it. We're done with the Sith. We don't need their help anymore. So this is like the breaking of the partnership between the Mandalorians and the Sith. So the Mandalorians start to kind of pull out. They start retreating. Now, down on the ground, Obi-Wan's losing the duel. Maul has him on the ropes. And Anakin kind of feels that. He's in his fighter. The ships are escaping. He's kind of augering that baby in. And he starts to feel the distress of Obi-Wan, and he gets a vision of Obi-Wan being killed. So he brings the fighter down and lands it as the battle is ending. Now, pretty soon, as the Mandalorian ships are escaping, the Republic fleet warps in, right? They come in at light speed, and they start taking out the retreating Mandalorian warships. But a bunch of the ships, Mandalorian warships, manage to jump to light speed and escape, including the one with Boba Fett on board. Back on the planet, Maul has Obi-Wan on the ropes. He disarms him. He disarms Obi-Wan. The lightsaber goes flying. Maybe he cuts the lightsaber in half, and he says some evil shit like, the time of the Jedi is over. The time of the Sith is now. But Anakin shows up, and he picks up Obi-Wan's lightsaber. So he doesn't cut Obi-Wan's lightsaber in half, but he picks up Obi-Wan's lightsaber. And him and Maul duel very briefly. It's clear that Anakin is untrained. He's very sloppy with the lightsaber. He's just kind of making these wide hacking attacks, very similar to like Rey in The Force Awakens, where it's like, it's clear that like, okay, I'm just kind of trusting my instincts here, trusting in the Force. But because he managed to kind of surprise Maul, he manages to hack Maul's arm off, sort of in desperation. Maul has him against the wall. Anakin yells, and this blast of the Force just emits from him, this Force push. And he cuts Maul's arm off and kicks him, and Maul falls down this big hole, kind of tumbling down this shaft. Very similar to Phantom Menace, but he's not cut in half. His arm is just cut off. So the audience is kind of like, oh, I wonder if he's dead or not. And that's the first time we see Anakin kind of like explode in the Force and use the Force and wield a lightsaber. It's a big moment. So the space battle ends. The Republic is there. Alderaan agrees to lend their fleet to the war effort. Obi-Wan manages to hand the Mandalorian battle plan off to Palpatine, and he sort of finds Anakin, thanks him for helping him, and he asks again, will you come with me to Coruscant? I can show you how to control this power. Anakin, he's scared of this power, and he also doesn't really like the fact that he just probably killed someone with this lightsaber. Obi-Wan tells him, you're special. You could do a lot of good in the galaxy if you learn to harness this power. So Anakin agrees. And that is where we end Star Wars Episode 1, The Living Force. That's just my idea for Star Wars Episode 1, man. If I was in charge of making that movie, that's kind of the stuff that would be in there. Obviously, there's a lot in there that is kind of inspired by or that already happened in The Phantom Menace. But there's also a lot of stuff in there like kind of inspired by the expanded universe, the Clone Wars, all that kind of stuff. So, again, not trying to fix the prequels. It's not necessarily better than the prequels. It's just, it's a lot cooler than me. It's a lot cooler to me to have a war between Mandalorians and clone Jedi than it is to have a trade embargo on the planet Naboo. So, and no Jar Jar. No Jar Jar. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it from me. Hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a little different, and I know it was a little long, but if you're into Star Wars, hopefully you got something out of this. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to The Last Jedi coming out. I think it's going to be great. The trailers look awesome, and I'm really excited for Star Wars going forward. So, yeah, take care, everybody. Happy gaming all, and may the Force be with you. Hey, one thing I just thought of while I was editing this video is you could have Padme be a military leader on Alderaan. So instead of her having be a senator who's trying to get the military to join in with the war effort, she is some sort of general. She's in charge of some of the ships in the fleet, or she's the admiral of the fleet, and she's trying to convince the leaders of Alderaan that, hey, we have this fleet, we should be using it. I like this idea because it gives Padme a more active role in the Clone Wars. It gives her cool stuff to do during the big space battle, and also makes it so that, hey, like, Leia and Luke's mother was a, like, fleet commander. Wouldn't that be awesome? I just was, like, thinking about that, and I think I'm gonna addendum to what you just listened to. Padme Amidala is the fleet commander, fleet admiral of Alderaan. Okay, I'm gonna go take a cough drop now. Talk to you guys later. Take care. Happy gaming all, etc.